City of Brisbane's Open Space and Ecology Committee meeting of April 22nd, 2026. And my computer's gone to sleep. That's great. So should we do roll call? So let's see. Tonight we're down a few, right? So let's see here. Yeah. So I guess we're starting with Jason, Committee Member Noonan. Here. All right, and Committee Member Salmon.
I'm here.
All righty, and Committee Member Rogers.
Here.
That's weird. I hear my own voice there. Okay, great.
And Chairman Anthony Walker.
Oh yeah.
Are you here?
I am here. Hello. Forget that guy. Okay, so I guess we're moving on to the adoption of the agenda.
Having an echo.
Yeah, I'm hearing my own voice there. Where's that coming from?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think we're good. Okay, so do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I move to adopt the agenda.
Second.
All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All righty, so adopted. Love it. That was easy. Okay, so.
Oh, excuse me. Let me turn that off.
Let's see. We're on to announcements. Do we have any announcements tonight? Any?
Yeah. Happy Earth Day. I just want to show off my t-shirt. I got this in Earth Day 1990. And on Earth Day 1990, Dan Sorrentino, Clara Johnson, my friend Lisa Bassell, and I cleaned the Lagoon area. And the four of us filled up a whole dumpster of interesting things. So Brisbane has a long history of celebrating Earth Day, and we still don't, as a planet, have it quite right, but happy Earth Day. There, that's my oral communications.
Oh. Thank you. Yeah, and I actually prepared a few remarks about Earth Day too, but did we?
Good.
So are we on to oral communications? Were there any specific announcements? Beyond that?
Yeah, no, I staff updates will come towards the end of the meeting.
Okay.
So we should be on, oral communications, and if there aren't any, then approval of the minutes, and then presentation from Schaff and Wheeler on the sea level rise lagoon study.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. Well, so I just had a few words to say too about Earth Day. Mine's a little bit more of a Debbie Downer at the beginning, but it gets better at the end, I swear. So before we move on, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that today is in fact Earth Day, the day of our meeting. We, I don't know if anybody planned that, but
No.
but very near and dear to the work of this committee. And so, I just want to say, I'll admit, I've always had kind of mixed feelings about the holiday. It's just one day of the year, and we tend to frame it as, saving the planet. But that's always seemed to me like the wrong frame. The truth is the planet will be just fine. Over its long, long history, this planet has seen far worse than us. So what we're really talking about here is saving the conditions that make life on Earth as we know it, including our lives, possible. And we like to elevate ourselves above nature and, think that we're smart enough to find a way to exempt ourselves from all these issues. But we're not separate from the natural world. We're very much a part of it, and the natural world right now is in real trouble. So yes, absolutely, let's celebrate Earth Day. I love it, love the energy, but I'd also like to encourage every one of us here and anyone listening, to treat it less like a holiday and more like a reminder that one day a year is not near enough. And a reminder to keep asking every day of the year, what's my impact, and where can I go further and do better? because the reality is, small symbolic gestures like eco bags and turning off lights a little bit more are not nearly enough on their own. The scale of the challenge we all face calls for deep and lasting changes in how we live, how we build, how we get from place to place, how we power our lives, how we think about community, and how we use political power, both individually and collectively. The good news is we already have so many of the tools that we need. The challenge really isn't technology at this point anymore, it's will. And it's the collective political will to actually use the tools that we have at scale, at the scale that this moment demands, and to change the way that we operate. And that's where spaces and groups like this, I think, really matter. The future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something that we shape through the choices that we all make, the systems that we build, the voices that we choose to elevate. And I just want to say I'm genuinely proud to be a part of a group that shows up to work together to do exactly that. So let's celebrate today, but more importantly, let's take it as a reminder that the work that we do here matters, it adds up, and that we have so much more work to do, but together we have the ability to push things forward and make the future better. So let's keep going together.
Here, here.
Thank you, Anthony. One thing that reminded me of is that every small action has an impact. So we might look at it and look at this day instead of a holiday, but as a day of taking action, and leading forward. And when you feel that it's overwhelming, just remember that each pebble in the pond sends out ripples all the way to the edge, and eventually it fills the pond. So every action we take does make a difference, both positive and negative. So don't give up.
Right. Yep. And don't stop. Keep going. All righty. Okay.
I move we approve the minutes from last month.
Did
Second.
we? Yeah.
Second the motion.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So we got the minutes. Good stuff. So now looks like we're on to a presentation on the sea level rise lagoon study.
Yes, and I have Robin from Schaff and Wheeler who will be presenting. She is just upgraded. She's been upgraded to a panelist, so there she is.
Hello. Am I a panelist now and can folks hear me?
Hello, hello. Yes, indeed.
Awesome. Okay, here's my slideshow. Let's share. All right. Can everyone see the slide presentation? Sorry, can you guys see the slide presentation?
Yes.
We're good.
Yes,
Okay,
indeed.
Thank you.
awesome.
I can even see my house.
Awesome. All right. Well, my name is Robin Lee. I work with Schaff and Wheeler. We are the consulting firm that is leading the Brisbane Lagoon Watershed Sea Level Rise Adaptation Plan. I have two other sub-consultants that are not here today, CMG, who is a landscape architect, and Civic Edge, who's running the outreach. But tonight's presentation is really just meant to be an update to the Open Space and Ecology Committee, and then also, this is a pretty brief, I'm aiming for 10-minute presentation, and there will be a longer presentation on April 30th when we have a community meeting. All right, so I'm going to just provide a quick overview, a background refresher of the project. Some of you I know have already joined us at our first community meeting, so some of this will be a repeat. I'll explain, who the partners are on the project, the community outreach that we're doing, the hydrology and hydraulic analyses that went into the project, and then ultimately what I'm really going to show here is we've developed 3 alternatives that are to help protect the lagoon from rising tides and increased precipitation, and then kind of tee up how we're looking at evaluating these alternatives. So just a quick overview, the Brisbane Lagoon Sea Level Rise Adaptation Plan is a grant-funded project by Caltrans to look at ways to mitigate the Brisbane Lagoon getting impacted from increased precipitation from the watershed, but then also increased tides as the lagoon drains into the San Francisco Bay through culverts under Highway 101. And so the primary function is looking at, how to mitigate flooding impacts and on the surrounding infrastructure to the lagoon, one of which being Highway 101. And then looking at how we can enhance the lagoon's resilience to sea level rise, how we can improve the ecological function and habitat, and then exploring opportunities to improve the existing public access. So this isn't adding new public access, but really focused on the existing access, which is really the Sierra Point Parkway, which serves as an extension of the Bay Trail. There is another project that is, the RFP just came out, so you may have heard about it, but it is the Regional Shoreline Adaptation Plan, otherwise known as RSAP, which One Shoreline is leading. So on the right-hand side here, you'll see a larger extent of the shoreline, which also includes the marina. So I did want to there is a larger effort. The lagoon alternatives will be a component in that regional shoreline adaptation plan. But for the sense and purposes for tonight's presentation and this project, we're really focused on just the lagoon edge. And there is also a living shoreline project that is being conducted by One Shoreline, which is the planting of eelgrass and oyster habitat along the shoreline. So you'll see a picture there right along 101. So again, just a linkage, this project is a tiny portion in a larger resilience shoreline adaptation plan that One Shoreline will be leading, and One Shoreline received $750,000 California Ocean Protection Grant for it. So in our lagoon sea level rise study, we do have a project advisory committee, which has BCDC. It also has Baylands Development that is working on the larger development to the north. We have Caltrain, we have the Rail Authority, we have Caltrans, One Shoreline, San Mateo, and Sierra Point Owners Association. So we do have quite a few different entities that are helping. And this is kind of just showing our project timeline. Our star is where we are. You'll see we're basically right before our second public meeting that's coming up April 30th. We have presented our project to all the entities that I just showed. We've had 3 meetings with them. And the meeting on the 30th is really to present the alternatives and also showcase an art competition. That is, details are up here. The deadline to submit the art competition was the 15th, and so all of the entries will be showcased at the community meeting, and I am likely to use the selected artwork as the cover for our Brisbane Lagoon sea level rise plan. And so that community meeting is at the library. It'll be at 5:30 to 7:30. So I encourage anyone who wants further information to join that meeting. I'll quickly go over our hazards that we're analyzing. So again, with climate change, in this study, we have two primary drivers. It's increased runoff that drains into the lagoon that acts as kind of a detention basin for the stormwater runoff. And then we're also looking at the tide changes, basically going to end of century, where some predictions on the high end are up to 6.6 feet increase in the tides. So why that matters is that as the tides rise, the ability for the lagoon to drain via gravity are getting diminished, because if the San Francisco Bay tide surface elevation is higher than the lagoon, water will flow from the bay into the lagoon, and then at low tide, the lagoon will drain out into the bay. So those culverts basically allow the San Francisco Bay to come in and out of the lagoon, which kind of gives it that brackish or salt water environment. So what we do from a very high level standpoint here is we take a very large storm with a medium tide, and then we take a very large tide with a medium storm. And what we're trying to do is we're kind of trying to identify that as we move from mid-century to end of century, what is the driving force against the water surface elevation in the lagoon? And what we see here is that the tide is really driving versus the increased precipitation. So what that does is it gives our technical team sort of a guidance in terms of what are we looking for to mitigate these flooding impacts that are primarily driven by the increasing tide. It doesn't mean that we're not looking at the increased runoff. It's just saying that the level of the water surface elevation in the lagoon is really driven by what the tide is in the San Francisco Bay. And just a quick refresher of the infrastructure that is surrounding. We have the fire department, downtown Brisbane. There's a big industrial fulfillment center right along the Caltrain tracks. We have Sierra Point Parkway and Highway 101. And then this also shows the culverts, which are actually two culverts. They're identical in size, 10-foot by 16-foot. Basically box pipes that allow the bay to come in and out of the lagoon right next to Fisherman's Park. And this kind of goes back to that thing, what I was saying about the tides. January 3rd was a sunny day. There actually wasn't any rainfall on that day, yet we had a very high king tide, which was about 1 foot lower than the elevation of a 100-year tide. And here we're seeing that the lagoon is actually draining, it's reaching the elevation of Sierra Point Parkway. So, and then the other component that is under our sort of existing conditions threat is that there is a saltwater marsh on the sort of southwest end. There's a berm that you can see on the left, kind of keeps that saltwater marsh not entirely inundated, but it does get sort of a flushing. But on the right, you'll see what happens at the higher tide or a December king tide. That marsh gets drowned out. So when we look at approaches for flood mitigation, there are three general strategies: protect, accommodate, or retreat. And what those look like is when you protect, you're creating a barrier or you're raising the edge. So that's, you know, a flood wall or a tide gate. Accommodation is raising the roadway or pumping the water out. And retreat is basically rethinking and repurposing and is kind of moving your infrastructure back. And then what those look like specifically to what our team looked at for the lagoon is these engineering measures, which are tide gates, flood walls, raising trails or roads, pump stations, and increasing detention. And we're pairing these engineering measures, which are really addressing that rising water surface elevation in the lagoon, with complementary measures that are nature-based solutions that address issues like waves, erosion, enhancing vegetation. And really, if you think about the landscaping of the lagoon right now, a lot of the shoreline is protected with, I would say, concrete debris and coarse rocks. And these solutions were kind of looking at ways that we could use nature to protect from erosion. So then teeing up the alternatives. So our team looked at developing three alternatives, and the reality is that while the alternatives are separate, they do not have to be one or the other. There is ways that you could pair two of these together. But what we tried to do is come up with the engineering solution being distinctively different, and then the opportunities to sort of pair these with the nature-based solutions. Some of them are very similar. So when we're looking at, we have the three alternatives here on the right. We have the managed bay waters, the raised lagoon edge, or a pump station. We're also kind of taking a look at the do nothing option. And so the do nothing, as I alluded to already, Sierra Point Parkway goes underwater. And then also you have the drowning of the marsh that's down in that sort of south edge there. So that's basically if nothing was done, you have increasing tides and increasing runoff, all raising the water surface elevation of the lagoon. The managed bay waters is adding a tide gate structure to those two twin box culverts. And what we're looking at is what's called a self-regulating tide gate. So this tide gate remains in its open position as it's seen in that left-hand picture until the tide reaches a certain threshold of elevation, and then it would shut. So our analysis is kind of suggesting that it shuts at a tide elevation of 8, which kind of mimics basically a king tide. So for basically most up until mid-century, this tide gate would close. I think we have about 3 to 4 king tides a year. And then for the remainder of the year, this tide gate would operate. It would operate in the open position. And then as the tides start rising, it starts shutting on a more frequent basis. The second option is called raise the lagoon edge. So this is basically the accommodate strategy, which is raising Sierra Point Parkway, which could be done basically with a retaining wall and bringing the road up, or a flood wall, leaving the road where it is, or raising the roadway up in place with earth and kind of having some fill into the lagoon, but that fill in the lagoon would give an opportunity to plant more native species on sort of a naturalized edge. So this is the raised lagoon. And then finally, we also have this accommodate, which is pumping the lagoon. And this would be basically, there's a couple different options that this could be, but the engineering is pumping, and what we've shown right here is we're basically pumping the lagoon out into the bay, and we're closing the culvert so that the tides don't come in. Now, this could also be paired with a separate pump station that basically brings bay water into the lagoon so that you're pumping in the salt water and keeping it a saltwater lagoon. If we do one pump station and just pump out, that would change the Brisbane Lagoon to be a freshwater lagoon. So the evaluation criteria that we've looked at with these alternatives is the ecological benefit, the benefit to the existing public access being primarily that Bay Trail along Sierra Point Parkway. Then we talk about how long permitting and the design duration would be. One comment that we have received is, well, what about construction? And I think ultimately at the end of the day, what we're going to find with all of these solutions is that it is the bulk of the time is going to be spent in the design permitting phase, and actually the construction is relatively similar. The contractors will, when they're given a design, they will get in and they will finish that design or finish that construction as fast as they can. And then we have the costs. So this is very similar to sort of a Yelp. It's more of a 1, 2, or 3 icon for how your project scores. And the way that we are evaluating these is based on the function of the flood control element, because again, we want to acknowledge that all of these are different engineering solutions, but they can be paired with nature-based solutions, and they could be paired with similar nature-based solutions. But you'll see that the ecological benefit for the raise the lagoon edge is a higher score there because it basically has a larger footprint, or let's call it a palette, for being able to do more nature-based solutions. And I think with that is the end of my condensed version of my presentation. I want to make sure I open it up to questions, and I'll kind of leave this up here. I know that's a lot to go in 10 minutes, and I encourage everyone to show up to the April 30th meeting.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the presentation. That was a real speed run. I don't know if we've all absorbed it quite yet, but does anybody have any questions?
I have a lot of questions.
A lot of questions. All right, we have a lot of questions for Michelle.
Okay. First of all, when you're using tide levels, historic tide levels, are you using the tide levels that are used from 1990, or are you using the new current tide levels that they've been readjusting based on satellite imaging?
That's a great question. So the San Francisco Bay, there's a 2016 regional study that re-looked at all the tidal datums. So that's one of the ones that we refer to, and it was correlated with FEMA as well. So they used a lot of statistics, and that's 2016. When we're looking at sea level rise, we're using the RSAP guidance, which is 0.8 feet minimum for mid-century, up to 3.1 feet for mid-century, which is high, and then end of century is 3.1 low to 6.6 high. So we're trying to use basically all of the regional guidance on the sea level rise estimates, and then we're using the San Francisco Bay tidal datum study that came out in 2016.
Which is already 10 years old.
That is correct.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
the epochs for tide studies is basically, what is it, 24 or 19, or it's a very odd number when NOAA updates their tide statistics.
Yeah, I think we were taken by surprise with the king tides was it December or January, when they were much higher than what was anticipated. And that was when a lot of this data came out, that they were using tide chart levels based on 1990 tide levels, which were
and the January 3rd event is kind of an interesting one as well, because remember, that was paired with what's called a storm surge. So you're right, it was higher than it was predicted, but the prediction wasn't that far off if it wasn't for the storm surge. And it didn't rain on January 3rd, but
No.
if you remember, it rained on January 2nd and
Yes.
it rained on January 4th. So with those storm events, you have an associated higher wind and basically a weather pattern that comes from offshore. And so that January 3rd king tide was paired with a storm surge. So, and the way that we are in our analyses kind of taking into account that storm surge is that the minimum tide that we are looking at is a 10-year, which is higher than a king tide.
Okay. So my next question is that you talked about the elevation of Sierra Point Parkway. But then my question is, have you really looked to see whether it's sinking? Because I drive it all the time on a long-term basis. And to me, it seems like it's sinking a little. It's actually tilting now towards the lagoon instead of being level. And so
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you've really looked at that carefully to make sure that there's not also a sinking. And if you look, there's been a lot of changes even when they did the repaving there. So I'm concerned about that.
I have no doubts that there is subsidence, and that we kind of put into this flood hazards. And I allude to the fact that the main primary drivers that we're looking at is rainfall and tides.
Mhm.
And with that subsidence, that's something that's factored into the proposed design. So if one of the designs is to raise Sierra Point Parkway, then we absolutely would want to consider, are we putting this new road on piles, or do we need to do lightweight fill, or do we need to do like different lifts and let it subside first? But those are all basically that would be taken into a detailed design. We're using what we have in terms of information of the elevation of Sierra Point Parkway today.
Okay.
But I don't have a ton of historical survey data to go back and say how much it has gone down. But again, we're using what it's at now with any sort of design that is raising and filling is going to need to incorporate subsidence into that design.
Yeah. And when it goes under the freeway towards Sierra Point, um, you you have a ceiling limit there, kind of for raising it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And then uh, when the tide gate remains open, that's concerning because, oh, also one more on the thing about elevation of the Sierra Point Parkway. Wouldn't you also have to elevate the railroad tracks on the other side of the lagoon?
The railroad, well, yes and no. If you do a tide gate that controls the tides from coming in, the railroad tracks are at about elevation 11, so they are safe. Sierra Point Parkway is at about 8.5, so those railroad tracks are quite a bit higher than Sierra Point Parkway. And what we're sort of looking at are designs that real. I think it's a little bit unrealistic to expect that those train tracks are going to be elevated. And in fact, you saw that Caltrain is on our project advisory committee.
Yeah.
We asked if they had plans for, what is your resilience plan for the railroad tracks? And
Skis.
let's just say there was none.
Okay.
So I think that our approach to this is, can we come up with solutions that don't require the train tracks to be elevated?
Yeah. Okay. And then my next question is about, have you tested any of the lagoon mud, especially at the southern end of the lagoon, for contamination, toxic contamination? Because
No.
I think that needs to be done. I am really concerned that with the rising tide, that it is releasing a lot of toxins that were deposited in the last century from Van Waters and Rogers VWR, which was would have been a Superfund site if Prologis hadn't bought it. And that there was a lot of toxic material that was deposited during their early days. And so I'm concerned about that with the rising tide. And that brought me to my next question. Have you considered any dredging of the lagoon? Because there's been a tremendous amount of siltation that has happened in the lagoon over the last 15 to 20 years, particularly from the development at the Northeast Ridge. We actually sued them about their siltation that came down. And then with the numerous landslides that we have had since 1982 till current. And so the lagoon has incredible amount of siltation in it, particularly by the tunnel bridge. And so the lagoon can't accommodate as much water as it used to. And so
Yeah,
and
that's a great
that
question.
affects
And
the
so,
rainfall,
yeah.
how much rainfall it can
So
take.
what we have right now in our analysis has come to the conclusion that increased detention doesn't solve the issue. So we don't recommend dredging as a solution. We recommend figuring out how you manage the tide. And that's more important. And one of the reasons for, and you can kind of see it in this image here, it's a little bit hard to tell, but a lot of the sedimentation that has occurred is lower than the invert of the pipe. So
Yes.
it ends up being quasi-dead storage. So
Yeah.
it actually isn't taking up the storage that you need for your stormwater runoff. So I think for two reasons, I mean, if you have contaminated soils, then a dredging solution is going to be very, very challenging, right? And the second thing is that we don't see a need for an increased volume because those alternatives that we presented address the rising tide in a way that you don't need to increase your volume.
Except that ecologically, it would be of benefit to be able to circulate the water in and out of the lagoon better for what is there.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I mean, those can be, so again, remember, our alternatives are driven by the flood mitigation measure, not by the ecological benefit. But that being said, any large construction project or flood mitigation infrastructure should be paired with an ecological benefit. We all know that, right? There's gonna be some impacts and there's gonna be mitigation, but this level of the alternative is to come up with a concept to manage the lagoon water surface elevation.
Right.
So yes, those are definitely considerations, but that's not the level of detail that this study is really designed for.
I understand that, but the ecological value of this lagoon is very high. It is one of the last places in the riparian corridor along the bay that a lot of these birds have, and it's one of the reasons we saved the lagoon back in the 1960s from being filled with garbage, other than its aesthetic value. And I think that's of really high importance. And I would be very, very opposed to changing the conditions of the lagoon to fresh water, because that's not what is needed there. It's a long flight that a lot of these birds have. And the value of the lagoon for the migration of the birds and the very specific habitat of the fish and other small aquatic life in that lagoon is really, really important. And so I'm really not crazy about if you build one pump, you better build two. And that's, so I'm really, the raise the lagoon edge, there's, I think we
well, you
cannot
see
look,
it, the raise the lagoon edge scores ecological benefit higher.
but
And I think the reason why we added 2 of the little quasi leaves in the ecological benefit of the pump station, and we can always, this is draft, that could always go down to 1. But I think there is, the argument there was that if you with the pump station, you do have a better ability to manage the waters and keep that lagoon water surface at what it is, and you bring in a different habitat. And this is where
that's a problem. Bringing in a
Yeah,
different
so-
habitat is a problem.
so hearing again, I'm the engineer, so hearing that is important. And I think that what we can do is we can always take into consideration changing that to, a 0 or a 1.
I would, yeah, because having those 3 little things there and the 2 little things for the pump
It
station.
looks like someone who made this really favored this option because they put more bicycles in there too. So, and I just find it hard to believe that it's only going to be $2 signs to raise the edge of the lagoon. I think it's going to be massively expensive. I like the little.
Well, again,
Pardon me,
those
I'll
dollar
just finish
signs-
I'll just finish my
Yeah.
thought. I like the little, slip back to the other one you had, the manage bay waters. I like the little toilet mess. The simpler, the better. I think you get into pumping. There's so many points of failure. It's so expensive. It's going to mess up the environment. So against that. Can't even tell you how against that I am. So I like 2 and 3. I like 2. I mean, yes. 2 and
And I want to bring up here too that it's actually it is sometimes I think it's important to actually have something that you don't like, because the problem is that there are other people that are going to look at this. And for instance, if you're the freeway and you want to assure that you're not impacted, or if you're the train tracks and you want the best solution, if somebody sees this report, they're going to say, and it was actually written into the grant application, why is there no pump station? Because the grant application said you would look at them. And what, this is kind of trying to do is show that, yes, we looked at it, but for these reasons, there is another solution that we like better.
right.
Yeah, because changing the very nature of what we're trying to preserve is not really the right thing to do here.
Right.
And I guess I would question that with, so if you do nothing, okay, actually we put none.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the pump station is none as well.
Are you suggesting we do nothing?
No, you're saying,
Nope, sorry.
you're saying ecological,
Sorry.
ecological,
Rating.
ecological
The
benefit. Is that what
ecological
you're?
benefit rating
Yes.
is none for the pump station.
Right. So let's change that.
We can do that. Again, this is draft because this is not finalized. And this is sort of what we're looking for, this type of feedback at the community meeting as well. And our report, I think, we are presenting alternatives in the report, and then we select or we promote the selected alternative, right? And then that RSAP, that regional study comes in, and they're going to look at the entire edge along with the marina, and then they're going to say, well, what could we do for the lagoon? And then we can say, well, we looked at all of these, and this is the front runner.
So I do have one more question about the pump station. What
Yeah.
power generates the pump?
Well, that's you have to design that. That goes into those dollar signs. I think the
Nuclear.
pump station was over 15 million. So,
Yeah, the other thing too is often when we have high tides, it includes power outages. So that's not
Yeah.
going to be very helpful.
well, I mean, it can be done though. I mean, if you look at all of our wastewater treatment plants, they're right on the bay edge, and they all have pump stations. And Foster City and San Mateo have pump stations for their lagoons.
And do they have
So
independent power sources?
they do. They have backup generators.
That's another 10 million.
Okay. And then there's a cost associated with running the pumps when they need to be run.
Yes.
Is that figured in here?
No, because I don't know if there's a good way to do that. But what we're trying to do is show that even up front, it's so much more costly.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's also not a very
Aesthetic?
aesthetic or green or, yeah,
Yeah.
sustainable. Yeah.
So you might
But
want to
again,
make some footnotes about the downside of having a pump station.
right, we certainly can do that in the report.
That would be good.
And I think I took out a ton of slides from this presentation. I think we do have, with each one of these, we have design considerations, which basically detail all the complications that each one of these comes up with. So I will make sure that adds like the power usage and backup power and
Long-term
all that.
maintenance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That-
And I really wish you would put something in there about the possibility of dredging, because I do think that's been needed in the lagoon for a very long time.
Yeah, I'm trying to wrap my head around how we do that, because it doesn't, again, remember, these are addressing the increasing water surface elevation in the lagoon,
Right.
and that doesn't. And that's not the task for this
Right. I think with respect
study.
and
I
deference,
think
it's a
maybe
separate
that's,
mission, you know?
Yeah.
So that's the problem.
Okay.
yeah.
So I have a question for you. Once you present this to the community and there's 3 different options, actually there's 4, including the do nothing. And it gets fine tuned and we see the benefits and pros and cons of each of these possible alternatives. What happens? Who makes the decision on which alternative to choose?
Yeah, that's a great question. We, as the technical team, along with the city, we will have a draft report for review. So I'm trying to think of how to answer that question the right way. I mean, ultimately, it is the technical team putting the report together, but I would hope that it comes across that it was a group effort with the project advisory committee and the community input and feedback received on the draft report, that the preferred alternative is not just the preferred alternative of our technical team, it's all of the project advisory committee and community who've had input. And again, this evaluation criteria will likely be changed and modified so that it sort of shows the evolution of these alternatives through the process and which one is recommended. And then what ends up happening is this regional shoreline adaptation plan, or the RSAP that One Shoreline's doing, takes these alternatives into that, and ideally there's funding is found, and then a project gets designed and constructed.
But who says go on which project? Is it you? Is it city council? Is it the staff? Who says which one?
Well, we have been hired to do that. So, but that being said, we are doing that with input and feedback that we're hearing. So I'm not, I guess what I would say is like, I'm not going to put pump station as a preferred alternative based on this conversation.
If I could just interject here, typically when we have these professional studies done, you know, a lot of the work is around, you know, planning work, and then it will move into design. All of that takes funding. And so a lot of times with these studies, they would then go to a city council subcommittee for review with a recommendation. And then that recommendation would then be bumped up to city council for review and adoption. And typically the reason for that is because, you know, there are going to be costs associated with certain alternatives, right? So along the way, you know, Robin's correct in that they have the professional expertise to provide us with a preferred alternative, but ultimately, you know, it will go through the process like it does for so many of our projects.
I would imagine Caltrans will have some trigger pulling power for this project, given 101 and the train tracks.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I think the tricky part is if you look at the raise the lagoon edge,
Yeah.
that protects Sierra Point Parkway, but it actually doesn't protect the freeway because it hasn't addressed the tides. So ultimately, I think what you're looking at is probably a phased approach where potentially the raised lagoon edge occurs first, but ultimately down the road, a tide gate is needed. Otherwise, you would be raising Sierra Point Parkway to be at a higher elevation than the freeway.
Right. Yeah. That doesn't.
But I don't think that's, I mean, I think also, again, going back to sort of this idea of attracting funding, it's helpful to have multiple different options. Whereas, I mean, even though I understand there's not an appetite for the pump station, with this evaluation criteria, I don't think, I mean, pump station also isn't going to attract any grant funding, but at least it's shown why it's not the, you know, selected alternative.
Cool.
And your timeline slide shows that, if I saw that correctly, at the end of this year, we'll have a plan in place.
That's correct. I mean, okay, we should caveat that that's a plan in place for the lagoon. The ultimate plan for the shoreline and the Sierra Point Marina is going to be a longer timeline.
Okay.
Okay, and it sounds like since we're going through normal process with this, should we expect an EIR at some point for any eventual project, or?
Any eventual project that goes into design would require an EIR, but you don't do environmental documentation on concepts because this is a planning document. There's no funding or construction documents, so the EIRs would be at a much later date.
Sure. No, that makes sense.
Do you have an idea when that might be? I mean, what's your forecast for this project to get started?
It's all going to be dependent on finding funding, I would imagine.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah.
And through the chair, just to let you know, we do have a raised hand.
Oh,
So I don't know if you want to, if you're done with questions and want to take public comment, or.
how's everybody feeling? Are we? No more questions for us? Okay, let's address the raised hand.
Chris, please speak.
Yeah, thank you. Two questions. One, I'm mystified in both cases. The lagoon is part of the BDI property, and I don't understand how all of this is falling in our laps, and that they don't seem to be involved in the conversation that to a significant extent.
Well, they are on the project advisory committee, the Baylands Development Inc. But yeah, you are right and correct. And I'll pull up the slide of property ownership. That was one that got cut, but I think I left it in the back. Here's the overview of the ownership of the lagoon.
Yeah, and all of that's going to need to be reconciled, I suppose, as part of this effort. And one other thing, in that illustration that was on the screen when I started to speak, and I probably should have asked that question first. I'm always humored by the fact that the icon of a bicyclist is used. And during the presentation, you even referred to the Bay Trail as being what would be compromised. But there's a road there, and actually most of this is automobile traffic. And so I guess my concern is when people are looking at this and trying to evaluate the importance, they might be thinking, oh, well, the Bay Trail's not that important. But I suppose access to Sierra Point certainly is. So it's just
That's a great, you're right. It is public access. So maybe the bike is a misnomer. Maybe it needs to be a
Something
car, a
else.
bike, and
Yeah.
a walker to fit together. But you're right. It's public access. So it's not necessarily on a bike.
Right.
That's a great point.
Okay. Thank you. That's it.
Yeah. Thank you.
I mean, to that point, are there any plans to improve access as part of the project to cyclists and things like that? I know they've been talking about extending the Bay Trail, but that is that not directly part of this?
So I think I cut these slides out as well. But the Raise the Lagoon edge does, so basically in a sense, let's say if you're going to raise Sierra Point Parkway, you have an opportunity to put back something that is wider, and you know, it could be a separated walkway / bike path, or it could be a wider path. So the Raise the Lagoon edge, which is basically raising Sierra Point Parkway, does have the opportunity to put something back that's better. However, the lagoon is BCDC's jurisdiction, so they are going to be motivated, right, to have improvements done to the Bay Trail, but there's also an impact associated with going inwards to the bay. So we have been having this conversation of this beneficial fill with BCDC. That being is if you were to raise Sierra Point Parkway with fill, you would have a shallow, mild slope, which would be a media for planting natural plants, using those as sort of the natural armoring, and would ability to potentially widen, but it is also an impact.
Yeah, interesting. Well, it seems like that's potentially a very positive co-benefit if, you know, might as well while you're in there.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you'll see in the evaluation criteria, there's 3 ecological benefits and there's 3 bicyclists soon to be changed to multimodal transportation.
Yeah. Well, maybe keep them in there if we're going to do something about the bike paths. Yeah. Yeah.
When they're
But I think
making
a bike path
decision,
could
it's
also be a
misleading.
walking path.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. One more question about the do nothing option. It's listing the costs as none. I'm assuming that that's because these plans, this report is really just focused on the cost of the project itself, correct?
The cost of the flood mitigation, yes.
Right. Okay. Okay. Because it just seems to me facially, it's in many ways the cost of doing nothing could be the most expensive.
That's right.
That's true.
Maybe you should have no bicyclist on the existing.
Everybody dead. Yeah, that's right.
Right? They're gonna be underwater.
So Robin, I have just one more question that just kind of came up when you were talking about the do nothing, Anthony, is, you know, water will find a way. And we may be able to control or look and see the water that we're looking at, but what about the groundwater? I mean, like where the Bank of America site is used to be the bay. That's all landfill. All of where we are right now is landfill, it's marsh. So
Yeah, so
what
that's
about
a
the
component
underwater? The
that'll
underlying.
be in the regional shoreline adaptation, because that's a systemic problem, not just the lagoon, right? That's the entire sort of shoreline. And so that will be looked at in the regional shoreline adaptation.
Yeah, because doing all of this isn't going to prevent the groundwater from rising in the other areas, will it?
Correct. Unless, say, you did a flood wall and you did a sheet pile really deep.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think, is that all the questions? Anybody? Anything else?
Tony,
Ah. Tony?
we haven't, yeah, we took one from Chris.
All right.
Tony Varios. Good to see you all. This meeting here is an example of some real hard work that you're doing. Other things I don't know. You know, everything has its levels of difficulty. I guess Robin Lee is a consultant contractor for this project. Seeing the picture and then the disembodied voice, I wasn't sure until I finally could track it down on the screen. I don't know how long you guys have been working on this, and I would think that what Michelle said seemed to suggest, and a couple other people's comments seem to suggest that the communications of what the concepts are, what the problem is, what the concepts are to possibly deal with it, and what the preferred methods may be, regardless of the cost and time. Those things I don't think are addressed well enough by these charts. And for example, where it says cost, even if it says everything is an estimate, because this is not, none of this is set, it's just just an examination phase or a discovery phase at this point for this project. You could still put in cost of doing nothing may have a cost of $1 million a year or $5 million every 5 years for repairing the road that's there now. I imagine road repairs will be a constant thing if we did nothing. I don't know, and it's not clear, and I missed, forgive me because I didn't realize you were even doing this today, or I'd have been tried to be here earlier. I don't know what I missed in the beginning of this presentation about doing nothing, what is going to be the damage or the potential damage. Now, when Michelle mentioned the dredging, it seems to me that that has a benefit, an unknown cost at this time, but it should be explored. And it should be also looked into from the perspective of when the garbage dump was operating and before the lagoon was the lagoon, well, it was the bay. At some point, I got the impression that there's some garbage under there, but I'm not sure how far it goes from the northern part of the road, the Lagoon Road. I think I heard comments at city council meetings previously that there was some amount of where the road stops and then there's a bunch of dirt and then the lagoon starts, and maybe it was that dirt area that has garbage under it, but I'm not sure at all.
I'm not sure either.
So let's say there isn't any. If there isn't any, then the sources of pollution in the water would be runoff and dumping from the VWR scientific, I guess.
Plus the pipeline from,
The gas
runs under
pipelines.
there, yeah.
Okay, if they're leaking. And is there any testing about those pipelines over 50 years or however long? How long they've been there? 50, 60 or longer?
They were at least since 1968 when the tank farm was put
Okay,
in.
so 60 years. And you would think that they'd be monitored, but I don't know if any of us know that they are or to what extent. You know, I'm sure they're monitored to the extent that at the, what's the name of that company? The tank farm company?
Oh, yeah, Kinder Morgan.
Kinder Morgan. Kinder Morgan has a station there and it's monitored, I think, 24 hours a day. And they probably have dials and monitors on the flow of everything going through all the pipes all the time. That would be a standard thing. But I don't know how sensitive they are in terms of, is there a minor leak that would be enough to pollute the water and hurt the bio situation, as opposed to something that the pipeline would need to be repaired for. I don't know anything about that. I think those pipelines are under high pressure, So I don't think that they want any leaks at all there. But that's something, again, that I think that should be inquired about and determined and put on the city's record. So anyway, getting back to this thing, the cost of doing nothing, I think that should be more explored. What is it, as opposed to just an imaginary thing? And then is this a project, assume you had unlimited money, no problem getting the funding, is this a project that you would be expecting to be needed to be done within the next 10 years, or the next 20 years, or the next 30 years? When does it need to be completed? And then how long would its benefits be expected to last, like for 50 years or 100 years after it's done? I think that those things are things that the public would like to know. And I get the impression from the city staff, Christina, what she said is that your part in this is to look at it from the public's eyes as their committee, OSEC committee.
We're just one part of it, Tony. This company gave us a full presentation at the Brisbane Library a little while ago that the public was invited to, and they did discuss the do nothing, and this is just an abbreviated version of what they're going to be presenting on April 30th.
So it's going to be more detailed.
Much more detailed, many more slides. It'll be at the Brisbane
Yeah, and
Library.
we also have some really beautiful boards that you can, go stand up and ask lots of questions. And I do want to just put one caveat here is that, and this was right in the beginning, that the objective of this study is really to address sea level climate change threats. So we're looking at increased runoff and rising tides. So while I'm not denying the water quality implications and the importance of that, it's not, this study is not to improve water quality. It's to address increased precipitation and rising tides.
That's clear. My concern was that the company that keeps changing its name,
Yeah.
that owns all of the land and most of the lagoon, if I understand it, I want to know why they are not being forced by the city and BCDC to do things in the lagoon to protect the environmental situation of the lagoon. To my understanding, nothing has ever been done since the causeway was made and the lagoon was in essence created. I don't know that anything major has ever been done, and that seems to bother me. So it was my impression that all of the environmental work that was done, CEQA work that was done about the land portion of the Baylands, sort of treated the lagoon like it wasn't important.
Yeah.
And to me, the lagoon is a jewel of Brisbane. It's like the crown jewel. So why would we not want to put an awful lot of effort and thought into what happens to it? But at the same time, I know these people are experts at what they do. They know the options. But I think it would be helpful to, they're going to hate me, I think it would be helpful to present it differently than these little leafs for environmental benefits and bicycles.
I think what they're trying to say is we are seeing 1/5 of this
Yeah,
presentation.
and
there are many
maybe
more
all of
slides.
the rest of the detail would answer people's questions and my questions. It might. The other side of the coin is just that it takes so long to go through it. How many people, other than you people who are dedicated to caring about it, you've proven that, and I care about it. But I don't think most people are going to go through a 100-page document or whatever it is, and then maybe their head will be spinning after they did. But they're not going to have an opportunity necessarily to stand up here like I am today and throwing out questions and impressions of what I've seen, which was just that little bit. So
It'll go through the normal process, Tony.
Yeah, it's a long process.
It's a long process. And this is just like the first salvo of what we have to address. And
I
this
get it.
isn't something that we can put off for much longer. And so there's an urgency about it. And I think that the city and the larger arena will be looking at this is truly, we're just starting, we're starting this. We're starting late, but we're starting it.
Well,
And it's going to escalate, and you will get the opportunity to speak before the council
no,
and the
that's good.
decision makers when it goes further along. And this is right now is our time to get some critical feedback of what we see, which we've done, for the company to respond when they do the public and with the council. So yeah, stay tuned, because there's a lot more to come, Tony. You know
I
that.
appreciate that, and I don't have any argument about that. I appreciate
We're not a
that.
decision-making.
No, I get that, but you get to say what you think individually and as a group as it goes through the city staff and it goes up to the city council. They'll want to know your
We have
your
not
feelings.
been at this point charged with reviewing this formally for the city council.
You may be at some time.
We may be.
In the meantime, one of the things that really stands out here is that when if we're talking about real serious bay water rising bay levels, then we know the state handles the freeway, and they care about the freeway. They may not care about the lagoon, they may not care about the baylands, they may not care about Brisbane, but they care about the freeway. And they probably already have studies about when that needs to rise or what they need to do to protect it. I like the idea that these people presented about the floodgate that apparently is a manually operated floodgate. It's calibrated so it'll open if the water goes up to a certain height, and then when the water goes down, it'll close if it goes up, and it will open if the water level goes down. That manual thing, that sounds pretty cool. But it seems to me that if we're looking seriously at flood inundation, as Michelle said, it doesn't just come from the bay over a barrier. It also comes from inundation of a rising water table. And that's not a joke. She's very right about that. And it was one of my ideas was just to raise Bay Shore. Raise it, because Bay Shore comes down from Ice House Hill, and it's a big valley, and then it goes up at the other end. If you raise that, you create a dike, you can protect the city. And of course, one of the other things that the city staff has not done that's a major consideration is the city needs the Department of Public Works. It needs the Department of Public Works to be ready for an emergency 24/7, 365. Where the Public Works Department is currently located is right on the lagoon, and it's incredibly subject to being cut off.
We all know.
Well, the city also owns property at the other end of Valley Drive.
But Tony,
So anyway,
you're
I'm
really
done.
off topic here. And we
Okay,
have
I'm done. But my point is that I think that you're looking at a Band-Aid here in terms of flood mitigation as opposed to a major fix. Thank you.
I think ultimately it'll be a combination of many solutions that we're going to need. So studying all of these is really good. And pay attention. Come on the 30th. I expect to see you there, Tony. April 30th. I will. I am. But I expect you to be there.
No, that's right. Well, okay, so
We appreciate you coming.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your engagement there. And I think there's a lot more to learn on the 30th. Robin, will you be there on the 30th? I'm
Yes, of course.
excellent.
And we will also have CMG and Civic Edge will be there, and it'll be a combination of boards. We're asking for people to vote on the artwork submittals, and there'll be a presentation, and there'll be Q&A.
Will there be snacks? Just kidding.
Oh, there will. I know there will be, but I didn't want to entice you with food. I want you to come for the material, but yes, there will be food and snacks.
Anthony, I have one question. Is there,
This is recording, so,
I understand.
okay.
I understand. The April 30th meeting is going to have the in-depth information. Is that correct?
Yeah, Robin will have a much more
We'll
the full
have more
presentation.
information and we'll have a longer slide presentation, but I also don't want to, I want to remind people that this is a planning study. These are concepts. So there is a little bit of, there are no design drawings for these. We do have cross sections. We will have a little bit more information, but again, it is a planning study with a very limited footprint with a specific objective, which is manage the water surface elevations in the lagoon so that it is resilient to climate change.
Excellent.
My question is there any reason why you can't take your presentation and say, don't freak out about this because this is only planning concepts. Nothing is being said. We're only looking at options. And put that on the city's website. So prior to April 30th, if a person wants to put 4 or 5 hours into reading your material, trying to understand it, they could actually do that because they're not going to be doing that on the 30th.
Well, there is a website dedicated to this project. Let me see if it's on the last one. Oh, it's not. The city does have a website dedicated to this project. And so I definitely encourage you to look there. I believe there are some links there as well to, the tides rising. But I hear what you're saying, and I definitely can probably do a better job because one thing to note is that Brisbane is not the only city that is dealing with this. Every single county and city that touches the San Francisco Bay is dealing with shoreline protection, and that's why BCDC has Senate Bill 2, I think it's 72, which requires these regional shoreline adaptation plans. It is a systemic problem across the Bay where basically if you're a city with a shoreline touching San Francisco Bay, there is no city or county that is resilient to rising tides.
Thanks, Rob.
And I think in fact that the city of Brisbane is actually one of very few locations that has an existing natural feature that serves as detention. The only other place that I'm really aware of is the Palo Alto flood basin. That's when you drive on Highway 101 through Palo Alto. There's basically a bunch of marshy land, and at the very end, there's a tight gate structure. I think they have 5 creeks that go into that. But very few jurisdictions have a dedicated detention system that basically serves as storing runoff prior to going into the bay. So the city is actually in a relatively good situation. And again, that's kind of why dredging is not needed, because that lagoon has an adequate volume.
Okay.
Thanks, Robin.
Yeah, thank you very much, Robin.
Thank you for your
Sure.
patience.
Yeah, we had
Of course.
a lot of questions for you there. You weren't
No,
kidding.
but this feedback is really helpful. It's basic. I mean, this is helping us for the community meeting. And I like that comment about basically saying that none of these are going in the ground. These are ways, these are concepts that the city could proceed with to manage what we're seeing as the biggest threat is the tide.
Cool.
Right, absolutely. Still ideating, and this is putting all the options on the table and figuring out what makes sense.
Yeah, and you guys
Right.
get to work on the the climate action plan. Maybe we can prevent some of this.
Absolutely. Yeah, needs to be in there.
Yep.
For sure. All right. Well, thank you very much, Robin. We really appreciate the presentation and
Yeah,
all
fair
the
feedback.
great answers to the questions.
Absolutely.
And we're looking forward to seeing you on the 30th.
Yes, I will see you guys in real life on the 30th. Okay, take care.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank
Have
you.
a lovely
Bye-bye.
evening.
I'd just like to note, if you go on the Brisbane website and search Lagoon Study, it'll show you the page that I have pulled up on the screen here.
Lagoon study.
Is there any way we can get that in the blast before the meeting? Because not everyone, a lot of people read the blast. They won't just go to the website. So if it's posted there.
Yeah, it's my understanding it's been in the blast, and it's also been in the Star, but let me go ahead and let Caroline know that
Maybe,
there's
yeah.
an opportunity to do it again, maybe. Yeah.
Okay.
Is the library going to be large enough to handle that many if people really show up? It was, I guess, not my problem.
We'll see, yeah.
Maybe.
Standing room only.
Well, if the crowd triples, it'll be up to 3, so.
Will there be enough
there
snacks?
was a good, there was a good number of people who were at the first presentation. Yeah, maybe like 20, 25, 20, at least 20. Yeah. So.
Okay, well, good stuff. Lots to look forward to. All right, so should we move on? Keep things moving on to old business. We had select representative for the David Schooley Acknowledgement. Where are we at with that one?
I nominate Michelle to present to David Schooley. Any seconds?
Wait. Can you explain exactly what the role does?
Yeah, so there was direction at our one of the council meetings when they approved the funding for the Schooley plaque. It was essentially appointing one member per committee to discuss plaque placement, what the plaque might look like. So there were questions around that I know that they wanted this sort of ad hoc committee to discuss.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, you can proceed, Jason.
I'll go back to nominating Michelle. Any seconds?
Anyone else interested in doing it?
I would be the runner-up if Michelle is unable to execute her function.
Yeah, I'm okay with it, yeah.
Okay, good.
Especially since I already did the groundwork. Forgive the pun.
All right, so is this one that we need an official vote on, or is?
Yeah, just,
Okay,
I think you
I would
should.
nominate Michelle if there's any seconds. For
I
that.
second it.
all right. Oh, yeah, all in favor?
Right.
I abstain.
Yep. Yeah, well, that's a good point, actually. Do we even have enough people?
Yeah, we do, actually, yeah.
Just the 3, okay. All right, I guess you're up.
Okay,
Fantastic.
let me know when to show, Christine. You guys let me know when to show.
We will. I know Public Art was selecting their person, I think tomorrow night. So once we get everyone on board, yep, we'll send something out.
Okay, great. And I think then we are on to new business.
Yeah, Mary.
Oh, yeah, the tree committee.
The tree subcommittee.
The tree
free tree
committee,
program.
free tree program.
Mhm.
So we have a presentation. Michelle and I got together,
Couple times.
yeah, a few times to put this down on paper and to hopefully use this as a base to get council to buy into the whole tree program. And Anthony and I went to the last council meeting to present our accomplishments and the 2026 work plan. And I can tell you that the mayor is really excited about pushing this tree program through. So we know we have their support. It's just all the approval logistics that need to happen. So we'll take you through this presentation pretty quickly. When Adrian was here a couple years back, we had Planet Geo. We used Planet Geo to do a tree inventory of Brisbane. And so we have all this data now that helps us understand what parts of Brisbane need help with planting trees. And so with that, the status as of 2024, we had in Brisbane, not the Baylands, around 4,700 trees. The 2040 canopy goal that we came up with and we all agreed on tells us that we need to plant around 18,000 trees between now and 2040. So that amounts to a little over 13,000 trees between now and then. Okay. I'm just gonna go through this quickly. So the team has been evaluating options for a citywide tree canopy cover goal by the year 2040. And that all these calculations and information received from Planet Geo is how we got to the 2040 number of 18,000 trees. So that's around 23%. And the scenario assumes areas already above certain canopy thresholds remain unchanged. Central Brisbane was modeled for a 30% canopy goal where feasible. Commercial areas modeled for about 20% canopy coverage. And then the Baylands area modeled for approximately 25%. The tree planting targets to achieve this is around 13,000 trees, around 8,800 trees in the Baylands area, and around 4,200 plus for Brisbane. So that's around 280 to 300 trees a year, however you look at it. That's a lot of trees. And then so, and the next slide, how was the 23% goal, how that was modeled? It's part of Title 24, the Green Building Code that we talked about a while back. So any areas above 30% canopy, they would remain unchanged. We're just hitting those areas that are running below. 30% canopy in central Brisbane, 20% in commercial zones, 25% in the Baylands area. So the overall average is 23%, and that's what we all agreed on. So again, our goal, 13,000 plus trees by 2040. And that's important to keep in the back of your mind. That's a lot of trees. And it's a lot that we want the Baylands to commit to that canopy goal, right? So as that development starts coming to fruition, we need to really pound on that. So where will the trees be planted? Baylands and the city of Brisbane. Again, this is a little redundant, but we're just trying to hone in on and make sure everyone is on board with it needs to happen. We need to do this, and it's going to take some effort, and hopefully we can get to 300 trees on average. So it's a two-pronged strategy. Citywide, we'll hit street trees and parks, residential planting, commercial greening, and the Baylands development, hopefully 60% will be native fire-resistant species, habitat-sensitive planting, and on a large-scale opportunity. Preferred attributes of new trees to be planted, certain percentage of native trees, fire resiliency, climate adaptability, the size at maturity, anticipated lifespan, suited to specific site conditions. So in other words, we need to plant the right trees so they last.
And in the right spots.
In the right spots, yes. Yeah. And so other long-term considerations, Michelle and I talked about, and I have brought this up before, and I think Tony Barrios would agree. We should have Brisbane's own tree farm. We certainly have the space to do that. I'm throwing your name out there. So it's okay. So you need to understand all this information and this data in order to appreciate why a free residential tree program is important. And so Michelle and I talked about that, and I think Christina has experience with that, with working with past city of South San Francisco. So to get people, to get the free tree program to get it going, we believe that incentives for residents are important. Everybody likes free, right? And so, a free tree, we would provide planting guidance and some care support. And we would prioritize low canopy neighborhoods, those that need it, seniors and underserved households, and renters if they have permission from landlords. Other incentives for residential tree program, and these are just ideas. I'm sure there's 100 more that we can talk about, but here's a few. We would subsidize a purchase of a tree. We would provide possibly a water credit, maybe $10 a month for the first 18 months of planting, so that tree can get established. We would provide vouchers of up to $100 for purchase of a tree. That would be subject to approval by the city. We would work with local nurseries, maybe get some free store coupons to bring the cost down. We would provide care support, have a team internally that could do that. And again, I'm going to plug for Brisbane's own tree farm. Some of the potential program providers, and I'm sure there are many more, but Friends of the Urban Forest, outfit called Canopy, Our City Forest, California Native Plant Society, and then the many private commercial nurseries. Okay. And then the implementation timeline, and that's just based on current development projects. There's so many projects going on right now, but this is really important, and I think we need to move fast as council is expecting us to move fast on this project. So very rough, 26, we would launch the program and begin planting. And then we would start scaling up a couple years later with potential partnerships and collaborators. And then we would complete the targets and assess the canopy. And hopefully we would, meet that goal of 4,300 trees for the city of Brisbane, and hold the Baylands to their obligation of around 8,900 trees. It could be a little less, it could be more. We don't know until that gets going. And again, we all know this, but why this matters: it reduces urban heat index, improves air quality, it increases shade, increases fire resiliency, it supports our habitats, and it improves neighborhoods. Trees are a blessing.
Can I add one thing? Based on our last discussion, it also helps with runoff
Yeah, it does.
and mitigates that tremendously.
Yeah.
And so this is would help with our lagoon situation.
Yeah. Yeah. There's only positives for planting trees. There really is. And so in conclusion, the plan, this creates a healthier, cooler, and more resilient community through strategic tree planting and strong community partnerships. So hopefully that, and then there was information on the contact information for all the different partnerships that we listed.
There is one thing that came up since we met that it just actually came up the other day, and when I was thinking about it, we were discussing it. Is the Northeast Ridge is a planned development, which has specific rules and regulations in regard to their trees and tree canopies. And many of the trees there are now, have grown larger than and taller than the buildings and larger than expected. And we may need to do some work with the Habitat Conservation Plan trustees to be able to enable some changes in how we manage the urban forest in that area. Because it's the responsibility of the homeowner associations, but at the same time, that's kind of a burden, especially since all the trees were planted at once, they're all maturing at once. They're also starting to be an impediment to flight of and the butterflies because they're so tall now. And some of them are aging out, and there is a cost associated with replacing the ones that have gone. So we may have to work on some special plans to accommodate achieving our goal in that area. And there's a lot of leeway in here, but this is a very well, shall I say, framework for a really great plan.
Two things. Well done, Mary and Michelle. Well done. This is great. This is just great. And the other is someone has their hand up. Christina has their hand up.
Oh.
Chris, if you wanted to go ahead and speak.
Yeah, thank you. This is great. I've been waiting for this for a very long time, so I thank you for bringing it around. is there a map? You had said that my question was going to be, are there priority areas? And you said that the priorities were going to be the areas that did not have a decent canopy. Is there a map someplace that we can see where the gaps are, where it seems to be acceptable? So that,
Yes, there is. We used a company called Planet Geo to gather all the data and then brought it in-house. And I'm drawing a blank on.
Bob Sage.
Bob Sage pulled it together, and he has this crazy excellent database of where all these trees are. So Christina, yes, we do know what areas need help and who should get it first. Yes.
Yeah, if I could
Is
just
that
add,
map available to the public?
yes, it is. Actually, we are bringing it to council, so we could publicize this, and we're bringing it to council the second meeting in May, city council meeting. Adrian will be presenting along with Bob Sage on this. It's really an extensive tree inventory. There are maps as it shows planting, it shows trees that may need to be removed. So there is a lot in this inventory that will be showcased, and that is going to council for adoption in May.
Okay,
Yeah.
two more questions.
Sure.
The All Ages Committee, or whatever it's called, there's an aspect of that talks about installing benches. And at that time, I had suggested that bench installation be complemented with tree plantings so that the benches would have shade. Is there some way to marry those two things? And my last question, this may seem silly, but is Sierra Point at all included in this?
I'm drawing a blank on that.
No, I don't
think it is.
I don't think it is. It was assessed with the tree inventory.
Yeah.
I don't believe it is included in this plan, but it might be. I have to go back and look at the document. We did discuss it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let us find out, and we can let you know. if
Yeah,
you
one
don't
of the
mind.
On the
issues,
benches?
I was just going to say, one of the issues about Sierra Point is
Yeah, Sierra
because
Point.
we have to be careful of what we plant there because it is a landfill with a capped
Yeah,
landfill.
Yeah.
And we've had a lot of tree die-off because of,
Yes, I know.
and so we're working on that. We have bigger fish to fry there than just the trees.
Yeah. So, and the benches with the all ages group?
That, work in progress, Chris, stay on it. Help us stay on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, and well, I'll take this offline with Christina later. Thank you.
Christina, thanks for coming. And you too, Tony.
Right. Do you wanna-
Okay. I think generally, we're in agreement on trees. I'm talking about us five. With one exception, and that is, we've got an insurance crisis going on here in the state, and it's nowhere near being solved at this point. Although there's people talking, saying positive things, but I don't see it as real. So I think what I have seen as a resident born and raised in San Francisco, an observant of their urban tree forest there before they even called it that. A lot of bad things have been done there by the Friends of the Urban Forest. I don't mean to knock them. I don't have anything against them particularly, but I've seen how they operate. And there's people making a lot of money off of that nonprofit. They planted a lot of trees that are the opposite of what this committee has suggested. In other words, the wrong tree, the wrong type, the wrong size, in the wrong place. And without common sense consideration for how big it's going to get and what impacts it will have on either the property next door or the street or anything else. And in addition to that, while we all know how small Brisbane is in some senses, a little microcosm of San Francisco, the way I look at it. San Francisco I think the last time I read a couple weeks ago, they had something like a $15 million budget, or 15 or 16 million. And I don't know if Christine or anybody else knows it to correct me if I'm wrong, but that was their tree trimming budget, 16 million. And I don't think that's even touches 1/4 of what they need to spend. And they're talking about trimming trees there every 2 years, which is, from my personal experience, they need it every year. They're talking about 2 years, and they don't get around to it in some cases for 10 or 20 years. And there was a guy just recently in the news a week or so ago where he got fined something like a large amount, like $50,000 for cutting some trees next to his property. And he didn't do it the right way. He didn't follow the right procedures, and he got spanked for it. But all of that still came back to the fact that if the city had done its job, he wouldn't have had to be in that position, and they didn't. So I think it's critical that as you guys go through this analysis and process of planning, that you don't assume that they did anything right and we can do it that way just because some contractor.
Not using them as an example,
No,
trust me.
but I'm just saying that contractors can be overly optimistic about what should be done and how it's going to work out. The other thing is, you talked about a tree farm. I want to, if you haven't already, you're just in the beginning stages of this. So if you haven't already identified potential locations for that tree farm, that's a big deal. I would think that it would be great if the city could already own that land or buy that land. Because where the nursery is now, for example, there's a big hunk of land there that the nursery sits on, and I think it's up for sale.
No, it belongs to the Baylands.
It belongs to the Baylands. Well, but I
Yes.
thought they put it up for sale.
No, they did not put it up for sale.
It appeared to be. Was it up for
No,
lease?
yes, it was up for lease.
Okay.
And they were going to do a tree farm there, but they backed down from that because I think they realized that that wasn't ready yet to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's great. And as far as the tree farm goes, there's anybody who doesn't know anything about it can learn it online these days pretty easily. But most of the places that sell trees to the commercial retailers are planting them in boxes. At some point, they 24-inch boxes or larger. And I can be a resource to you folks for that kind of thing, discussions on that, because up at Viewpoint, when you mentioned Viewpoint, that's where I live 26 years now. So I saw before there was a tree up there where they planted every one of them. And I was a landscape chairperson up there for at least 10 years before we got into our reconstruction. So I personally managed all those trees. I think there's over 1,000 of them up there now, maybe 1,200. But I managed them. I saw where the stock was bad originally and the tree failed because it didn't have any roots. All it had was a couple sticks holding it up. We'd put it up after 2 or 3 times of putting it back up, we'd take it out.
Yeah.
And the city's tree ordinance wasn't in place at that time. It came in later. And when the city put together the tree ordinance, it
Tony.
really put handcuffs on the association up there, where the association is forced to pay whatever it takes to maintain or replace a tree. The city doesn't care about those costs. So anyway, but I've got a lot of input on that and how that can be done, because there's trees that are up there that should have never been put there and should be replaced, but we can't do it all at once. So thank you, and again, if you want my help with that, I'm willing to help you.
Yeah, some really good points there. Thank you for your input.
We will be having a volunteer group, tree advisory group, eventually.
Yeah, and I think that is a really good point, though, about the long-term maintenance and upkeep being definitely a part of the plan, but
It is. And also, one of the advantages of having the free tree program is that we have to approve the tree, of where it goes and what kind it is. And we're very cognizant of that, Tony. Good. Thank you. All right.
Okay. Let's move on to staff updates. Do we have any staff updates?
Yeah, we do. We have a few. I just wanted to thank you all for coming out to Owl Canyon and doing the restoration habitat Earth Day event on Saturday. I thought, despite the medical emergency, it was a success. So thank you so much for all who participated.
We actually had a quorum of OSEC members.
Yeah, it was great. And
Jason,
hopefully
me,
you
and
all
Aaron.
like the Instagram love that Caroline gave you all. Also, Adrian is coming back, so we're very excited about that. She will be taking my spot here with OSAC, and I will be transitioning over to public art. So Adrian will be, leading this group going forward, hopefully in May. But myself and Molly will still be here to support as needed, Adrian and Dolores. So thank you all for your patience over the past year.
Thank you for doing,
Yeah.
taking these roles well.
Yeah, it was
Adrian
fun. I feel like I finally understand OSEC, and now I am going to public art.
Oh, boy,
So
aren't
it's
you
fine.
lucky?
But thank you all. I've really had a good time.
Laura,
No,
you've done
thank you
a
so much.
really amazing job backstopping
Yes.
both Molly and Christina
Yeah.
and us.
She's great.
I will be staying. Yes.
She'll be staying. Yeah, it was great. So, and Dolores has a few updates for you all.
Yes, I just want to say thank you so much to Anthony and Mary for presenting at council. They were very thankful for all of OSEC's hard work and aspirational goals moving forward. A few notes that Mayor Mackin mentioned were, one of them was the dark skies ordinance and how she has received some notes and some mentions from neighbors. And as one of the newest ad hoc subcommittees, she wanted us to sort of focus on that a little bit more this year moving forward. Suggesting more outreach, community presence at farmers market, perhaps more interactions at Day in the Park for dark skies ordinance, as well as a library display. So I think that's something that education and outreach that maybe we could focus on a little bit more, is doing dark skies outreach as well as invasive species outreach as well. So thank you so much for your presentation, and council absolutely was amazed by you guys. So congratulations to all of OSAC. We have a new OSEC committee member swearing in on Thursday the 7th, and she will be joining us in next meeting, I believe, in the May meeting. Last thing, Molly wanted to mention that there is going to be a mental health walk around Crocker Park on Saturday, May 9th, with games, food, and vendors, and it'll end in the community park, so that should be a fun event as well. Lastly, I feel like we mentioned this probably 100 times tonight, but there is a Lagoon community meeting at the library on Thursday the 30th. Thank you guys.
All righty. All righty. Do we have any subcommittee reports? Anything to report back at this point?
Well, you had ours for the tree thing.
We did, yeah.
Yeah.
We got that.
The only newest thing I added was the dark skies and invasive species. I think maybe we can revisit that once all or more community or committee members are present, just to see when we do convene that, who would like to be on each of those two ad hoc subcommittees.
Yeah, and we'll be accommodating our new member, Hannah, in all of this as well.
Yeah. So I guess we'll have more to do at this point in the meeting next time. Yeah. Okay.
Is there any update on the frog habitat?
It's my understanding that they are going out there with legal to look at the site. So that is in the works. So sorry, nothing new to report.
I did take a walk today and saw a lot of cute little tadpoles and a couple little ribbits, so that's good news.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. And then let's see, what if we've got Bike to Work Day in May, BBEP deadline coming up.
Well, just one thing on Bike to Work Day. This has been an OSEC initiative for 20 years or whatever, for a long time, since before I was on the committee. But there's some confusion about that amongst the public. And I just, you know, I mean, if Park and Rec wants to take it on, I
Didn't
don't
we talk
know.
about that a couple meetings ago? We said there wasn't a whole lot of enthusiasm here, so go ahead with Park and Rec.
Well, the Park and Rec doesn't know that. I mean, do we want to keep it in OSEC or do we want to put it on Park and Rec? It started in OSEC because biking to work was an environmental thing. And, you know, it seems like something that they may want. I don't know.
I think the member that was most interested in it is not with us now, so I don't know if there's anyone who wants to champion it.
I think Adrian would show up at those bike to work days.
Yeah, I would say maybe defer it until Adrian comes back
Okay.
in May. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, May 14th.
Okay.
I'd just like to point out there is a Earth Week compost giveaway happening tomorrow with lots of fresh, beautiful compost courtesy of South Francisco Scavenger. It'll be out in the same spot that it was last couple times.
Which is across Bay Shore at the turnoff where you head to the nursery so it's right there under the bridge or by the bridge.
Correct. Yes, on the left-hand side.
Yeah. Bring your own bucket, bring your own shovel.
Okay. And were there, any chair or committee member matters? Anything that anyone else had?
No, but it looks like we're going to be back up to 7 soon.
Lucky 7. I like it.
Yes.
Good stuff.
Tony has a comment.
Brief.
Sure, if we can make it, if we could keep it brief. We're about to.
Brief comment. One is that you guys had already have a plan in the works to honor David Schooley, and I think that's great. I recently talked with him and asked him if he knew who planted all the oak trees on Quarry Road. And he said he did, starting in the 70s and working up. I've counted over 30 of them on both sides of the road. And I asked him, I said, what would you think if we renamed Quarry Road to Quarry Oaks Trail? And he said, well, that'd be fantastic. So I sent a note to Jeremy, the city manager, and suggested that he put it through your committee and Park and Rec to give that consideration, because it wouldn't require any changes of anything until the city ever got around to changing signs. But it could be a formal thing, and it would be in his honor. It wouldn't cost anything, so it could go right along with your plaque presentation. The other thing is that on Quarry Road a week or so ago, Davy Tree was out there and cut down a tree. It was a tree I was working on a week or a few days before that. And it turns out this tree had a failure. It had a branch that had an inherent vice in it. And part of it split off and fell down. But it wasn't a danger. It was already on the ground. The city decided to take it out. I'm going to be talking to Jeremy and Maz about that next week, I guess. I just thought I'd bring it up to your attention so you'd be aware of it, because I don't know who told them to take the tree out or why, and why they didn't save the wood for me to line the trail on the trail lining, the border lining project. But I said to them, can't we get coordinated? That's all.
I believe it was an acacia tree, so.
Yes, it was.
It probably didn't hit the radar that it was something you would want to keep or something. I don't know.
Well,
I heard about it after.
We'll work on it. We'll work on it with them. Thank you.
Hey, I just want to thank you because you don't get enough kudos
For the
for
work.
all the branches you lined Quarry Road with, and how we didn't have any water seep over that when we had those heavy rains. And I have walked Quarry Road, and it was in meticulous shape. We didn't get any of the leaves or the dirt going down Quarry Road, and that's because of all the work you've done. So
Yeah, that's
just, we
greatly
appreciate that.
appreciated.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just trying to help. I'm not in it for any public recognition or anything like that, but
No, but you deserve it.
I'd like to,
That's a lot of
I'd
time.
just like to have us coordinate so that, there's times when some people don't understand why something's done and they don't pay attention. The people that are wrecking things, that just makes more work for me, but that's like, you have to live with that. So I will.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
And does Christina still have her hand up?
I think she's, yeah.
Yeah, is that, is
I
that
think that,
new or?
yeah, let me,
Okay.
I'll unmute her. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I'm going to respond to Tony as well as make another point. Actually, what happened is on the tree, I had made a request of Moz that the garden, the community garden, get the chips from the visitation tree trimming that had taken place. He said, great. He said, but we also have this acacia tree that has to come down. So if you can hold off until that happens, we'll deliver them all to the community garden. That actually happened about a week and a half ago. It's already been laid down as mulch in the garden. So none of it got wasted. It's still used in the community, but I just happened to get there before you, Tony. And on the suggestion that we call it the Quarry Oaks Trail, why don't we just forget about the quarry and call it the Oaks Trail? Thank you.
Well, maybe we're gonna have to have a naming contest or something. I don't know.
All right.
Okay.
And with that, next meeting is May 27th. Exciting stuff. And I think that's it. We are adjourned.
Thank you.